Alrighty, we are in the home stretch. I love it when the final two sessions before drinks are probably going to be two of the best. For those who weren't in my room earlier today, my name is Kat Matson. I'm the Chief Digital Officer for Brisbane and I'm moderating the final two sessions this afternoon. We're now turning our attention to collaborative human-robot interaction. How do we actually get and move away from the humanoid kind of notion of, robotic slaves into actually where we're really heading towards? I'm really excited to introduce Professor Elizabeth Croft, a relatively new Australian who's actually only been in the country for not even 2 years yet, from Canada. Elizabeth is the Dean of Engineering at Monash and Professor in the departments of both Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering and Electrical and Computer Systems Engineering. Now, having only been in the country for less than a couple of years, Elizabeth decided that she'd take herself and her daughters off to learn to surf. So that has been one of her life highlights in the last 18 months. Would you please welcome Professor Elizabeth Croft?
Thank you very much, Kat. It's fantastic to be here, and just thank you for coming out. It's an opportunity for me. I'll do a lot of talks on, in telling people about engineering, and it's wonderful when I get a chance to talk a little bit about my true passion and what sort of drives my interest in engineering and the work that I've been doing over a number of years. I hate to tell you how many, around human-robot interaction. And a little bit about the journey about what I've learned about robotics by actually learning about people. So I'll tell you just a little bit about me. I'm a runner. I have a fantastic family. I have now a bigger family. I like to kayak, and there's more of what I consider my family. So I am Canadian, and the most important thing about your life journey is that you have family, you have supporters, you have people, and you have a career that you love, and you go with your passions. I think that's very important. I am an engineer, I am an academic, and I always say that I am the happiest person I know. I am very happy, and I think that positive feeling of enjoying what I do and finding the things that I love and then being really intensely positive about that really helps with the things that I do. And my gig is the best gig that I can think of, which is robots that work. That's very important, that they work, and they work with people. So this is actually one of my former PhD students who is now about to become an assistant professor at McGill University at Jung Moon, working with our robot Charlie and doing some fantastic work. And so today I'm going to tell you a little bit about my work. And often, when I'm on planes and stuff, people ask me what I do, and sometimes I hesitate, and I think maybe it would just be easier to tell them I'm a preschool teacher, because then they would ignore me. So sometimes I hesitate because they have so many questions. Are robots taking over the world? No. Will they take our jobs? Well, I think there are questions about work and how work will change. Will they affect my life in the future? Well, you probably will interact with a robot. Don't know whether they'll affect your life, but you should think about it. Are they coming to your house? No, not tomorrow. And will they do the dishes? Can you build me a robot that is going to look after everything? And I say, well, So, it's a tense kind of question. But I do think that there's some things that we need to think about that drive the way we think about interacting with robotic systems. And first of all, I think it's important that we have a common understanding of what a robot is. So there are some definitions, and the one that I prefer is embodied intelligence that can sense and physically interact with the environment. So it's not a chatbot. It's not a computer program. There's an element of computer programming, but it's that embodiment, that ability to interact with the world that makes a robot a robot. But the initial definition by the person who coined the word robot was artificial worker, forced labor, or serf, which is an uncomfortable thing. So, but I think there is this idea of they are something, they're not people, they're not a vending machine, but they're something that's being introduced to our environment that can impact our environment. Because they used to be like this, and they still are. There's many robots working in the sort of former definition of robots, forced labor, they're just doing these jobs over and over again, and it's fine, there's no people in that environment, and that's traditional robotic automation. But now we are imagining a future. I prefer the future on the left or the future on the right, and this is where we get into this area of social robotics. And there's a lot of questions that people ask driven by Hollywood, can you build this Terminator? And the fact is that we have to get a lot deeper into understanding how people interact with devices to be able to get to the place where we can build anything useful. But there's also some other things that we need to think about, and that's the form factor. And there's a lot of emphasis on humanoid form factor, whether that works or not, whether we like to have things like the Geminoid, which is the robot on the right, which some people really like and some people find incredibly creepy, or whether we would prefer things that have somewhat humanoid, like Jason on the right or the Robonaut, that don't quite look human, or whether we need that human activity at all. Does it need to have a face? These are some of the questions that we need to answer when we think about robotics. And in terms of some of the other questions and some of the other things about where robotics is going, I do think there is a fantastic acceleration of robotics that's happening. Reasons are 3D printing. It is now possible to 3D print robotic parts and make your own robots. So the maker movement is changing robotics. Sensing technology, miniaturized sensing, skin-level sensing technology, devices that you can just use to get tactile sensing from is changing how we can interact and how robots can feel the environment and interact with it. Computational power is also rising up very quickly. That also has an impact on what we can do with robots. And at the same time, deep learning, which is another very hot topic, is getting to the point where, at least at the computer level, it's starting to pass the Turing test. So one example is they used a bot, basically a chatbot for computer science students to answer questions, and many students at Georgia Tech could not differentiate between the chatbot and a real TA in answering those questions. So these things are changing computing. The Internet of Everything is changing computing in terms of the ability of ubiquitous connections and the ability of so many things that are connecting. So that changes things. And one of the most important things that's changing robotics is portable power. The fact that the power density in batteries is growing up also along a very fast-growing curve. And that makes the reality of robotics in our lives in the more near future coming to us. And so it's a time when we have to start to say, if these robots are coming, and they are coming to my house, and they're going to be in my life, how am I going to interact with them? Am I interacting them? Are they a vending machine? Well, not really. It's not. They're not like the regular automation where something hopefully predictable happens every time I put my coins in and I push the button. Well, sometimes I shake it. But it's not a vending machine, but it's not a human. It's something in between. And understanding how those interactions will occur, what the expectations of people are for interacting with these devices is part of the science and study that we do in social robotics. So we have to answer these questions, and I think some of the questions that we need to answer basically come down to figuring out the rules of behavior of robots. So when I talk about rules of behavior, a lot of people think of Isaac Asimov's 3 laws. How will people and robots interact? I love this XKCD cartoon. I put it on just because it's funny. But the rules should be don't harm humans, obey orders, protect yourself. Anything else turns out badly. So getting the rules right, getting the interactions right, getting the social norms of how the robot right is important in terms of trying to get interactive devices that are going to work well with people. So the future of robotics, I would posit, is just as much about understanding people as it is about understanding tech. And I think that is a really important shift that we need to make when we start to think about how we're designing tech and how we're getting it into the real world. So what I'm going to do is show you how we can design and think about some of the things we've been thinking about in terms of bringing people in robots, whether it's in collaborative manufacturing or whether it's in assistive living. What is the basic things that we need to think about in design to develop social robotics? And I think that it's really important to have a good methodology to be able to do that kind of design. And so the methodology that I think is really important starts with people. So when we think about designing social robots, when we think about how we interact with them, so many engineers start with, I want to design a cool thing. And I think what we really need to start with is, I want to understand the interaction. So it really does need to start with human-human. How do people do these things? Because really, social robotics are going to have to operate in a human environment. So human-human testing, whether it's ethnographic research or other methods, it can be very quantitative methods, but understanding interactions from a human perspective is so important. It's something that engineering needs. Once we've done that, and this is an example from one of our papers, then we can start to look at how people in robots work together. And then the really important thing is getting out into the field trials and doing it for real and doing it with large numbers of people so we can understand how robots and people will interact in different situations. And I think the other thing that's really important is that we do it for really basic stuff. So Dana Kulik had a great panel earlier today. I don't know if many of you went to it, but it was fantastic because it really looked at why a lot of social robotics are not being successful. Why, we said goodbye to Jibo this year, and it was very sad. Why other startups like Rethink Robotic did not survive. And I think it's because we really still have not understood very basic things about interaction that robots are going to need to be able to do, so that we can build clean, fluid interactions that are simple enough that people will understand them and positive enough that people will uptake them. One of the methods, or one of the things that we've been looking at, is the simple act of passing an object. And so the idea is to, if you're going to work with a robot, you're going to have to be able to share stuff with a robot. We started looking at human-robot handoff by starting with human-human handoff. How do people do it? So with one of our students, Wes Chan, we looked at passing basically something the size of a water bottle back and forth, and we just got people to come in, hand the object back and forth, back and forth. And by looking at that, we came to understand that there are rules in how people interact on objects. The giver of the object, they're responsible for not dropping the object. And you can see that because even when they don't have any load force, when they don't have no load of the object, they're still gripping onto the object. Whereas the receiver, when they have no load force, they have a light grip force. So the giver is responsible for making sure that the object doesn't fall, the safety. Whereas the receiver is the one that once they've pulled onto the object and put a little load on it, then the giver will let go. So the receiver is responsible for how fast you can let go of the object. And we would not have designed our robot controller for passing objects if we had not looked at people in that way. And it just changed how we thought about giving and receiving. And so this is what it ends up looking like. I hope this is going to play. Oh, good. OK. So if you look at what people had been doing, they're basically saying, well, the robot will release the object when the gripper displaces. So you kind of have to pull on it, pull it out of the robot's hand. But that's a very uncomfortable tug of war. Whereas when we have a robot working with this controller, I wish you could feel it, because it's just incredibly natural. It takes much less force to take out the object. So there's an example where designs have been mooted about, you know, we can do all these different things about displacement, or we can let go at a certain time. And that just didn't look like a person could do, you know, it didn't look like how people did it. And it was not until we really understood how people interact that we could get a robot to interact properly. Another question we look at is sharing space. When people share space, what should the robot do? Should the robot always have priority? Should the human have priority? Could we negotiate? Could we share? Could we get into the space together? And so we really, again, looked at people, this time playing card games, and both reaching for the deck of cards to collaborate with humans, and realized that people use a hesitation gesture, this kind of shaky motion, to indicate that they were recognizing the other person was there, but they wanted access. And so we use these in an example where we design these trajectories with a robot after looking at a bunch of people. And what we found out is that people recognized the gesture by the robot, and they liked working with it more when it gave that hesitation gesture. And this is kind of what it looked like. If we didn't use that, gesture, if we had the blind condition, then the person has to get out of the way all the time. If we then use the, got to get out of the way. So if we used abrupt stopping, you get the confusion. So people don't know when the robot's going to move or not. And it slows them down. If you use hesitation gestures based on what people do, then what we end up seeing is that people recognize that the robot knows that they're there, but they also know that the robot isn't going to interfere with them. So they have a much more positive view in our studies with people. The last study that I want to show you, which was done with a whole group of people, again, human, robot. Again, we're passing things, but this time we're looking at where people look when they're passing it. So we're looking at whether people look at the object or look at people. And we actually did a whole bunch of studies where we had people pass things back and forth again. And we saw three different things, two different major things. Oops. We saw people sharing attention or turn-taking. So sharing attention is where you look at the object when you're passing it. Turn-taking is where you look at the object and then you look at the person. And those are the two behaviors that we saw emerging from people interacting. No robots were harmed in that experiment or used. But then we turned to saying, well, can we see how that works with a person? So we tried actually three different handovers. We tried the shared attention. We tried the turn-taking, and then which is the looking up. And then we tried what I said would be the null condition, which is the teenager handover. And so we invited a bunch of participants. We analyzed them. And we came up with some very surprising results. So this is the no gaze condition. This is the teenager handover. This is the, there's the shared attention gaze. So you can see it looking in motion, then looking at the handover location. And then this is the turn taking. You look at the motion, you look at the object, and then you look at the person. And it looks a bit like, hopefully this is going to work. There we go. So here's no gaze. please take my bottle. Now the person is standing in front of a light curtain. They've never seen this robot before, so there is some novelty effects. We recognize that, but they were looking at all 3 different conditions in a randomized order. There's also a lot of other qualifiers, but okay, so there's a shared attention. Now the robot's going to look at just the bottle, hand it over, and the person is going to reach for it. And then the last one we have is the turn taking. So the robot looks at where the bottle's being passed and then looks at the person. So these are the different studies we did as we had people come through. And each time they're passing over that light curtain in front of them, so we know when they launched. And what's really interesting is that in terms of people's preference, the turn-taking approach was always preferred. People preferred the robot to engage with them, to look at the object, but then to look them, quote unquote, in the eyes. But in terms of efficiency, the shared attention, when the robot just looked at where the object was being handed, people launched faster. They actually went to go and get the object quicker. So it was very interesting in this study. We kind of get this, okay, well, you're going to like the robot better if it looks you in the eye, but you're going to do the job faster if it just looks at the object. But when we reflected on it, I think what we realized is that actually that's very true for humans as well, because if you're doing something that's social, where you maintain eye contact, you probably do it slower because it's a social activity. Whereas when you're doing something that involves flow, when you're just trying to get the job done, then you're just you're probably focused on the task. So really, it teaches us that in social robotics, when we're trying to have people and robots working together, we need to understand both how people interact, but also we need to understand what the kind of work that the person is trying to doing. So we learned a lot about how these cues interact with people. So what I hope I've shared with you in this very short talk is that when we think about human-robot interaction, we think about robotics, there's a whole bunch of social science that we need to bring in this. We really do need to understand how people interact. We really need to design around the user and the person to get good results on the tech. And so I think that's why I think it's so important that, again, we have the most diverse group of people involved in doing robotics. And I think if we do that, then the future truly will be friendly if we can focus on people as well as the technology. Thank you very much.
We've got time for the quickest question ever asked. Go for it, quick. Come on. Yep. Yes. The microphone's coming. The pressure's on.
Okay, I don't know if it's that quick. What's that? I don't know if it's that quick. What are noticeable differences we would see between some expected human-human interactions that wouldn't carry over to human-robot interactions, besides like efficiency?
I mean, the thing you'll see about the research is that to get this right, we're actually having to look at individual behaviors. And so I guess it depends a bit on what wouldn't work. Well, I guess what wouldn't work would be, sort of things where the robot's motion can't do that, when the robot doesn't have the ability to do the thing that you would like to express. Here's an example. We were doing stuff with gestures with a hand gesture. And what we found is that when the robot did not have an actual hand on its end and it was trying to point at things, people didn't get it at all. But when we put a child's glove on the end of a robot, people recognize gestures much better. They got all of the gestures just by that anthropomorphization. So I think the unexpected comes from how we help people build a mental model of what the robot is intending and whether we've got that right. And again, it comes from making sure we understand what people are expecting and doing when we design tech for people.
I love it. So my mind was blown so many times. So thank you. And unfortunately, we are out of time. But you can find Elizabeth on Twitter. I just found you, and I can't remember your handle already because I've tweeted you. At eCroft. Would you please thank Professor Elizabeth Croft? Our next speaker is going to talk to us around probably one of my pet conversations. How do we democratise investing in the new digital economy? Also known as how do women start investing and thinking that we can? Anu Bhardwaj is the founder of Chic, Crypto for Kids, Crypto Queens, and Women Investing in Women Digital, the world's largest media platform focused on women and investing. She's talking to us today about what we need to do to be investor ready, as well as thinking about how do we actually invest. Would you please welcome Anu Bhardwaj?
Thank you so much, Pat. I'm so delighted to be here with you here in Australia. It's my second visit to your beautiful country, and I've been enjoying all of your technical talks all day long. So today, now we're going to focus a little bit more on the investing side. How many in this room are currently investing in startups or in crypto? Raise your hand, please. Like 5, 6. Yeah, that's what I figured. Okay, if I had given you an app with preloaded currency inside and said you can invest that into causes and women-led companies, how many of you would invest? Raise your hand. Okay, that's about 80% of the room. Awesome. So this is what I've been working on. It's taken me about 10 years to get to this point. We've created a company called Women Investing in Women Digital. And this platform is a media platform. Originally started off as small seminars and conferences, really looking at the data that's out there with where women control money and the level of entrepreneurs that are actually getting funded. Okay, one second, let's move this slide. Yeah. So at the moment, women control more than 50% of the wealth in the United States. The stat was from 2015. It's actually higher now. And part of this is because women are inheriting money. Women are making money. There's so many of you in this room, I'm sure, who are advanced in your academic degrees. And ultimately, you are going to be the investors of the future. So if you're not investing now, you will be soon. And the question is, when do you get started and how do you get started? How many of you are entrepreneurs or want to be entrepreneurs? Please raise your hand. Yeah, so exactly. This is what we have been focusing on now, is how do we get women entrepreneurs funded? And when you're looking at these kinds of numbers where we're saying there's hundreds and millions of dollars and trillions of dollars out there to get women funded, the sad reality is that less than 5%, this is not just in the United States, but in the UK and elsewhere, is where women actually can get venture-backed funding. And there's many reasons for that, but partially, one of the theories that we have, it's because the less that women invest, the less the women receive, and it's directly correlated. Here's a graph, and it shows you how women were investing back in 2004, and they track it all the way up to 2014. And you can see that the higher the number of women investing, the more number of women getting banked. And this number has actually increased over the past 5 years, so we're actually seeing the trend go higher. There's been initiatives in the United States. I've seen some initiatives in Australia. I was here last year, meeting with Scale, I believe that's what it's called. There's an angel group that was in Melbourne that was hosting one of our events. Springboard, I don't know if you've all heard of Springboard, but they're here in Australia. And Amy Millman and Kay Koplowitz are dear friends, and they've been putting together investment forums and workshops and boot camps where women entrepreneurs get funded. So Shout out to them. They've banked over $7 billion worth of funding for women entrepreneurs, which is one of the highest in the world. And yes, Australia, you guys are at the top of the chain for that. The State of Women Entrepreneurs, is this opening? Let's see, one sec. Yeah, okay. The State of Women Entrepreneurs, if you look, the countries where it's the best to be an entrepreneur, you guys are number 2. I would argue you're actually number 1. We've been having some setbacks in the United States with #MeToo and other situations like that, but you've done pretty well in the rankings. This is from the Global Entrepreneurship Development Index, and Dell was very instrumental in this. I don't know if you had a Dell Women Entrepreneurs Conference here, but they came up with these stats. And interestingly, if you look at the numbers, even though you guys are number 2, there's still some challenges getting funding. And I know that the government's got initiatives that are female friendly, but we still have a long way to go. Just looking at the various statistics on how it's been difficult to get more women on boards, attrition in terms of women who are growing their companies over the 1 million mark. The other thing that we've been working on is our global reach for women investing, women digital, where we've now had events in all of the countries that are highlighted in pink. The ones in yellow are the ones that we're intending to do in 2020. We started off from ground zero back in 2014, and as of now, we've had over 10 global summits, 25 really big sponsors, and we've produced podcasts with 16 to 23-year-old young women and girls highlighting women's entrepreneurship, investing, women in tech. And those young women, the first co-host that I had was actually my babysitter. My nanny was the producer, and my 2.5-year-old was my co-host, who would say, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us. We've done shows with Princess Rima of Saudi Arabia, and we've done shows with the former head of Intel Women and Girls. The former Deputy Prime Minister of Sweden was on air with her granddaughter. And so really talking about leadership, talking about balance, but more importantly, talking about why we should invest in one another and the next generation of women and girls. After we had all of our conferences, we started a little Facebook group. That Facebook group had 500 members, and now we're about 1.1 million followers. 95% are actually millennial, which brings me to where we are now. So we've built out this platform. It's grown organically. The social media has been growing without any PR, marketing spend. But what's really interesting is now we are in the process of developing an app, the Chic Wallet, which is going to come out with preloaded cryptocurrency inside, already embedded. And rather than talking about investing and rather talking about how to do things, we're actually going to put these wallets in the hands of women, not only women, but we also have a children's wallet called Crypto for Kids. It's spelled K4K. And if you all open your iPhones, you can download it at the moment. It's already got preloaded currency and donated by NEM. So one of the reasons why I'm here at Hopper Down Under is Karen Cohen, who's with NEM Australia. She had wanted me to speak on the blockchain track, and I thought that this would be great for women in this room just to get a sense of like how many people would participate in investing in crypto if it wasn't so difficult. At the moment, if you look at the stats, Coinbase, according to Coinbase, 4 to 5% of women are investing into crypto. I got interested in this space about 2.5 years ago, and I invested in a small portfolio, $10,000, in 2017, and as of February 2018, it had quintupled. I thought that was pretty good, and I was speaking at a panel at the World Economic Forum in Davos, and I was talking to one of the Chinese investors, and he said, you know, how has your performance been? And I said about 300%, and I was pretty proud of that. And he said, how much do you think our returns have been? And these are investors in China. And he said approximately 3,000%. Now, imagine what would happen if women had found out about how to be investing into crypto at that time, right? We get the information last, most of us do anyway. We don't get in soon enough, and by the time we get in, it's too late, or we just missed the window. And so part of what we're doing with our current app is to really demystify what is this currency, how does it work, and kids are able to make their own crypto within a couple minutes. And you can see it's digital money, it's like cartoon money, and ultimately they can play games, and there you go. You've got little kids making this money. So we're really starting with the girls. I think that's ultimately been my finding, is that don't have to worry about starting now. It's like you can start at any age, but we're actually starting them off at like 5, 6, 7-year-old level. So for those of you that have little ones, it's something worth checking out. Sponsors, supporters, let's see here. These are people that we've been working with over the past couple of years, who've been helping grow this platform, so we always say thank you to them. But ultimately, the reason why we keep going is because there's so many of us that are trying to bring forward these young women and girls, be it in STEM, be it in tech, be it in financial literacy. I think they're all integrated. So really look forward to partnering with those of you in the audience who are interested in learning more about cryptocurrency, financial literacy, either for yourselves or for your little ones. I'm gonna play a video that talks a little bit about crypto for kids. And you're gonna see these little girls, predominantly Crypto for Kids is 80% girls, and they're building their own computer. And within 3 hours, they taught the computer how to mine their own cryptocurrency. So we're starting not just from the app level, but also from how do you actually start mining. And so that's something that's not traditionally Grace Hopper, but it's on the cutting edge. So hopefully, yep. Awesome.
Om Bhurvuvasvaha Tatsavitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat Om Shanti 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 Om. So we're like blessing this whole movement. We're going to make it go forward. So thank you everyone for being with us, and we're going to take you along the way with us as we go.
This is Anu Bardwatch from Women Investing in Women Digital and Crypto Queens. I'm here at the Laguna Main Beach, Arya's favorite playground, where we actually came up with Crypto for Kids, like putting the whole framework together.
We are very excited. This is the first day of blockchain on the beach, but it is also the global launch, the official global launch of Crypto for Kids.
Yeah!
Yeah!
One of the things that we did that was really interesting over the weekend is we got children between the ages of 5 to 10 years old or 13 years old to create a Bitcoin mining rig. So they built a computer from scratch.
And so what are these used for? Do you remember?
So the motherboard doesn't touch the metal, otherwise it will explode.
Exactly, it might explode if it touches the metal, right? Okay, so you guys want to do that?
How you doing? This is Stuart Bullard. I am the CEO of Ethereum. I'm here on blockchain on the beach, having a great time with crypto for kids. Me, being a father, it's a big thing to introduce financial literacy to them at a very young age.
The banks, they're controlled by a small group of people. The government controls things. Even companies control things. They control their finances, their records. With blockchain, nobody controls it. You can make yourself a millionaire with the click of a button.
When you have a centralized authority, you have the ability to cut off access. And that can be access to money, but it can also be access to things like records, record keeping, your own data, like all kinds of different things become problematic when you're not empowered as a citizen or as an individual, as a human, frankly, to own your own assets.
Trade-off between security and convenience when we pick wallets. There's no ideal combination. And depending how you want to spend or store your savings in cryptocurrency, you may decide to choose one or the other.
Your GPU mines cryptocurrency faster, because it's used for more repetitive tasks. Your CPU is used for more of a wide range of things. You guys can decide what to do with the computer. It's yours now.
Did you feel it was very difficult, or did you just pick it up really quickly? You were pretty much studying everything, weren't you, since yesterday?
It was pretty easy because Max is a good teacher for teaching me about
That doesn't mean that your parents actually can see that data or own that data. The data is yours. And I think we've got to start early on to start teaching kids the value of their data.
Super excited about where we're going to be taking this movement. And for those of you who are joining us now, this is Anu Bardwaj from Women Investing in Women. So yeah, it's all about action for us and starting as young as we can. And Crypto for Kids, I'm pleased to share, has already gone to the United Nations. Last month, we had an introduction to UN officials during Blockchain for Impact, and we've got more activities and initiatives that we're going to integrate into the current app right now. It's pretty boring. It's just play money, make your own play money. But there's a woman that I met from Brazil, Taina Reese, and Taina has come up with an app called Moeda. And in that app, she's making her own currency. And when they play a game, you can donate money to save the Amazon. So you've got kids actually playing and donating money that they win to a great cause and really getting them to understand social causes. The next version of Crypto for Kids is going to have a feature where the kids can actually donate their money to UN SDGs. So they can pick hunger, poverty, water, environment, whatever it is, and then we can track that behavior of where are they most interested in looking at demographic data as well. So there's a lot that's being done on this sphere, especially when it comes to women. How do you guys invest? How would you invest? It's not a question of it's too hard, it's too difficult. We have to simplify it and ultimately start as simple as getting your young ones just feeling comfortable with what is this and giving them play tokens if need be. And so that's really where we're headed for 2020 and beyond. I'm going to leave it open for questions. I know this is a somewhat controversial space, and people may have questions. Yeah? Yeah, and it's between us and drinks, so whenever we finish, it's up to you.
Yes, never be the one standing between drinks. Any questions? We will bring a microphone to you. Yes.
Awesome.
I might swap sides because you're mic'd up, so you can.
Sure. Let's do it.
Thanks so much. It's really interesting, and I'm interested in crypto myself, but it's always been too hard because I'm not a coder, right? So I'm interested to know what your biggest kind of challenge was in getting, this up off the ground, and what continues to be your challenges in the space.
So I'm talking to a room full of women in tech. I would say like the hardest part for me has been navigating just the build. This is my first product, and understanding the finance, it's you figure it out because you get into these communities where people are talking and there's pattern recognition, and I would say we've got the smartest, I'm looking at the smartest people who, if you were to start working in crypto, you were technically way ahead of everybody else. It's just understanding the behavior and not being afraid of like these up and down spikes. And there's just some general rules of like, when to buy and when to sell. And if you can figure that out, that's easy. But part of the challenge has been in this space, there's a lot of new energy, and it's hard to tell like what's real or not real. Like when it comes to people, it's just, you think that, sometimes it's just smoke and mirrors. So it's really like a people business, trying to understand who's legit and not legit. But the companies that I've met, and I've met them in like certain world stages, I would say this is like Taina, for instance. I met her at the World Economic Forum 2 years ago, and I was asked to moderate and she was asked to be on a panel, and I saw her last weekend at another event in Bretton Woods, and it's been 2 years, and I said, so what are you up to? And she's like, so what are you up to? And this girl's been hustling, and she's like, I've got this app, I've got this tech, I've got this game for kids, but she's also got a $150 million fund funding women entrepreneurs on the side. So Taina has been very quiet, we haven't spoken, but she's getting shit done. And so it's like the guys, they would talk up a storm, and their companies don't exist anymore. So it's like you figure it out as you go, track those companies, and ultimately, like when you are dipping your toe in, get a group of people who also know what they're doing. And the more friends that you have like going in with you, the more diligence you have, and the less risky it's going to be for you. So that would be like one of the takeaways I had from this past year, is just diligence as much as you can and dive in as soon as you see like green light. Yeah.
Very nice. Another question.
I saw a hand go up in the front.
I was going to say I saw hands.
Yeah,
Sarah's hand would have gone up.
Awesome.
So just in terms of dealing with children and cryptocurrency, I mean, I guess ethically, if you can track their behavior, it's really great for insights, but obviously you're trading that off. You'll be learning as you're building, but I mean, what sort of, have you come into any struggles there where you're like, oh, actually we'll learn this stuff that maybe is breaching privacy or anything like that?
So I've actually put my own kid on the line first. She's like first and foremost. And so it's, we're learning as we go. And all of the kids that you saw in the room, many of their parents or sisters or aunts or whoever, they're in the crypto space. And they're like, yeah, we'll donate our kids to do this experiment. So it was like people that we knew. We had Vitalik Buterin's mom that was also there. We had the president of NEM there, like just people that are in the space, the head of the World Economic Forum, blockchain sphere. She brought her baby, that was in third trimester. That was the youngest baby in the room. So it was really, let's try this and see. But I had talked to some friends of mine who are parents that have worked in the tech space, and they said, you know, you've got this COPA requirement. It's the Privacy Act. And ultimately, we're not taking specifics, we're taking demographics. So based on that, as long as we don't get too specific, we were fine. And also it's a game, we're not taking anything more than that. So if you're gamifying this, is what we've learned, whether it's for the women or the kids, I think that really helps. So having people that have done this before also really helped, and having parents who were building. Alex Tinsman, I met her at an event last fall, and I showed her the Chic app, and I said, I really, want to make this fly. And she's like, hey, Anu, you might want to consider doing a kids app. And I said, oh, I don't know where to start. And she said, well, I happen to have worked on Pokemon and Dungeons and Dragons. I know a thing or two about gaming. So like, this is how it all started after Cocktail, and that's what we're waiting for now. So if any one of you has any more questions, happy to answer. Otherwise, we've got a minute left for one more if you have any other questions. Yes?
Microphone's coming your way.
I'm wondering if you've found women and girls tend to be risk adverse when it comes to investing, and do you do anything to combat that or change that?
Yeah, the answer is absolutely yes. They've been statistically proven that less confidence because they're not understanding the numbers. And second of all, it's just, there have been studies shown like they're more cautious women traders specifically, but they actually produce higher returns because they are more cautious. So that was the other side of the study, and I believe it was like a neuro research that they did on women traders. And I would say that women investing, women digital, like when we started this, the whole game plan was we need to show role models like you guys who are doing outstanding things. And that was the whole point of the podcast. I've done about 20,000 posts on Facebook on that page that's gotten over 1 million likes. And whenever I see stories on women entrepreneurs, women investors, women in tech, like whoever's leading the game, if you just go through that feed, it's on Facebook, Women Investing and Women Digital, you'll see like all these articles just showcasing like there is nothing that you can't do, like whether it's sports, leadership, politics, whatever it is. And ultimately the way I think about it is the next generation should have what we didn't have, and what so many women, including Grace Hopper and Anita Borg and all these other women that we're celebrating the next 2 days, it's just what they've done has just led the way, and we just have to keep doing it for the next generation that's coming. So yeah, I mean, it's an ongoing process. I don't think we can ever stop. until we get to gender parity. But until we get there, this is the barrier. It's all psychological. You know this, I know this, and what we need to ensure is that the little girls don't see this, any barriers, and that's when we win.
Very nice. Would you please thank Anu Bhardwaj?
Thank you.
Thank you. A number of key themes were wrapped up there in that last session, but I think probably my favourite is that all good conversations generally start with a cocktail. So with that, we are at the official end of today's sessions, but of course heading off to drinks. If you head back around to where we've broken today for all of our food breaks and head out to the outdoor courtyard, you'll find that that's where drinks and the evening reception is taking place. Of course, continue to take photos, continue to network, continue to use the hashtag. One, so we can keep demonstrating that we are here, but two, so you can pick up these conversations later on when you're kind of remembering, maybe on Thursday or Friday, now what was that conversation? Oh, that's right, I took a photo and I hashtagged it with Hopper Down Under. Yeah, there's other people in the room who do the same thing as I do. I can see Anu's jumping back up. No, she's not. We'll get plenty of photos throughout the evening, and make sure you seek out the speakers that you didn't get a chance to ask the questions of. Have a lovely evening, and I'll see you back here tomorrow morning. Thanks, everyone.